The tedious reality of prop making part 2 with questions and answers. So in the previous part of this questions and answers double video series, I showed crimping these connectors, and then I stuffed the connectors into the connector shells. And now that I've finished stuffing these into the connector shells, it is time to actually make the little things that plug in that will melt the wax and drop the petals. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, it's a prop that I'm making for someone. It's for Beauty and the Beast. It's a novel twist. It's not a standard twist on this sort of technical prop. During the show, petals drop off a rose. I'm using this sort of branch, which is supposed to be the branch of the flower, but this is like double the number. And the connectors that go in have a resistor in the end. And when it's powered up with 12 volts, the resistor heats up and it melts the wax and the petal drops off. It's a different approach to it. I don't know if anybody's done it like this before. So next is the little resistors. Beforehand, I used 330 ohms and 12 volts, and it got hot, but not hot enough. Quarter watt resistor, so I'm now switched to 270 ohms, which I get quite toasty hot. Not too hot because I can grip it, but my fingers are heat sinking it. It's running at 44 milliamps. Let's bring the kink calculator in and compute this. 12 volts times 44.044 amps equals... That was so wrong. Maybe I should have done that differently. 12 volts times 0.044 amps equals, 0.5 watts. That's better. That's a more accurate result. Not sure what I pressed there. I think I did divided or something. I've left this resistor running for quite some time. I'm not particularly wanting things to burst into flames. And it's fine. It doesn't even smell hot resistory. So I'm reckoning that that's ideal. Of course, the power supply. So my 270 ohm resistors are going onto these matching Molexy connectors that will plug onto the end of these. Well, they should hopefully plug onto the end of these. Like this. Yep, perfect. And it will let the petals be loaded up and then just plugged into the rose as needed. So I've preformed some of the resistors. I've used my component forming machine. I shall zoom down a little bit for this because everything's going to be a bit close up now. I've got a Gatling gun machine that you put bandoliered resistors in, you turn the handle and it just churns them out. That makes a massive difference to what I really needed in the past when I was doing it one by one with this tool, where you pop a resistor in, you squeeze the trigger and it crops just one. This machine is like a machine gun. I got it off eBay for a fraction of the price it would normally have cost. It turns out it's made by Cliff, who make my quick test as well. And it takes a bit of setting up, and this machine has seen a lot of use. It's well worn, so it's not super accurate, but it's fine. And the amount of time it saves is radical. So now I've got a couple of options. I can either grip the leads and form them like this, and then solder a lead on and fold it into shape, or I can actually fold the leads together like this and solder them onto the connector. I shall try both, and I shall decide which I think is the easiest, because I've got quite a lot of these to do. Where is my solder? There is my solder. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to tin one of the pins in advance, and then I should get on with the questions and answers. But I shall try this first. And then, without even putting solder on this, I'm just actually going to reflow that. This is very, very fumbly. I'm going to reflow it while holding that in position and just getting the soldering iron in there. And I'll put more solder in that afterwards just to get a fresh bit of flux. And then I'll realign this pin. See, maybe I should just put solder on it. Yeah, that was probably the best idea. That was me being just over optimistic. I shall flow some solder on. When you're soldering, it's really important that you have fresh flux. See, when I put the soldering iron on this and you can see the vapor coming off it, that is not lead vapor, Karens. That is the flux coming out the middle. And the flux is really important. It's the bit that cleans the surface of the metal and lets the solder mate on. This is going to be very fumbly, partly because I've got an absolutely huge solder iron tip, as I usually do. I'm screwing this up so badly right now. I am just making a complete plonker of myself. But then again, there's nothing new about that. This is very fumbly. I don't think I'll be doing it this way. But not to worry, it is how I've started doing it. Note the silicon aquarium sleeving on the helping hands. That was someone else's suggestion. It turns out to be a really great suggestion. So this is very fumbly. This is regrettable. But that's okay. When you're doing something like this, you tend to experiment until you find a way that works well. And the first one takes ages and you're thinking, oh no, this whole project is going to take like hours to do. But then in reality, once you've mastered it, once you've got all the components preformed and stuff like that, it's a lot easier. This is not an easy way to do this. It doesn't leave much room for soldering either. So I've now flowed solder onto that one. Have I flowed solder onto that one? Is that good enough? Yes, it is good enough. Is it good enough? And now I'll flow some solder onto this side, and then I'm going to try a completely different way of doing this, because that was shit, quite frankly. That was not easy. That was undesirable. But it did achieve the desired result, and the resistor can now be sort of formed and folded down to the point it can be pushed into the wax. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the wax, you could follow the links in the description. That's my easy cop-out to show what this is actually for. It's for a theatre prop. An automated theatre prop that does stuff on cue with a slight delay. Right. Next connector, and I'm going to try it differently this time. I need to give better access. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to solder one lead. So I'm going to form the lead out, and I'm going to solder one leg of that on and then fold the other one in. This might also not work, but hey, you know what? It's worth trying. Pre-tin. Add some solder. That means it's going to flow together easier when I put it in. Oh, this gives much better access. This is the way it's going to be done. This is totally the way it's going to be done. Have patience. Let the solder solidify. Turn this round. Fold that lead in. Is it going to work? Yeah, I think it's going to work. I think that is going to work. That is so much easier than the last time. Although it's still fumbly and footery. I'd like to say that footery is a Scottish word. I think it's a Scottish word. Footery. F-O-O-T-E-R-Y. Footery. You can find a reference to it online, but I can tell what it means. Fumbly and irritatingly complex. In hindsight, a little tiny circuit board would have been nice for this, with surface mount resistors on it. But you know what? This is a one-off prop. That is something you should also know about the prop industry. You're basically doing all the research and development for a whole product, but for a single application. I wish the art departments of the production companies understood that the prop makers are actually doing a custom product from scratch for them. If I just bridge that with solder, I have bridged that with solder. That's going to get very hot when 12 volts applied across it. Oh no! This is the way I'm going to do it, but not that particular way. I've just had wine, by the way. I think I should mention this. That's my declaration of alcohol ingestion. But anyway, prop art departments of production companies, be aware that your prop makers are actually making custom products for you from scratch, and that you should maybe appreciate that and give them the decent money for it. I'm looking at you, BBC, and all your... yeah, let's not say that. Not I have any plans to work again with the BBC in the near future. Wow, let's just burn all my bridges. Fuck Disney. Oh, that's another bridge burned. Actually, not, because the creatives at Disney are great. They're fine. Yeah. That's not my finest moment, but you know what? It's soldered and it works, right? That's another one done. Right, tell you what, next question. David Roberts asked, you have so many videos on different subjects. How much research do you have to do before each one? To be honest, I've been doing electronics for long enough that nothing takes me by surprise too often. It has to be some weird bit of circuitry to take me by surprise. Everything is fairly standard. Once you've been in electronics for a while, you look at a circuit board and you just instantly look at it and go, there's a power supply, there's that, okay, there's the regulator section, there's an I/O, there's the processor, and that's it. You just tend to get used to electronics and recognize the modules. Same as other industries. Like when a mechanic lifts the bonnet of a car, I'm not sure, what do they call the bonnet in America? The trunk? No, that's the back, isn't it? We call it the boot. Everything's different. You can call them automobiles. Dunno. Anyway, when the bonnet lifts the engine access compartment lid of a car, they'll just, even if it's one they've never seen before, they'll recognize all the components because, well, it's an internal combustion engine. And in the future, the same mechanics, when they're working on electric vehicles, they will adapt to them very quickly and be very comfortable with them very quickly. If anything, they're going to be easier than they used to be, perhaps boringly easy. When that happens, they will quickly adapt and they will just instantly recognize stuff when they lift the lid. The future mechanics, I'm going to guess, will go much further into the stuff than the manufacturers want. They'll go into the actual, they'll start changing transistors and drives and stuff like that. That's just how it goes. I'm not even sure where that started the research thing. Yes. So, yeah. And the same, like an elevator mechanic walks into a control system that he's never seen before, just walks into the control room of an elevator, some random foreign brand. They'll just intuitively recognize all the modules. Elevator mechanics get a lot of mentions in this channel. It's an interesting job. It was my first career choice, but didn't happen. Kind of slightly regrettable, but also not slightly regrettable, because it turns out that things went a bit too washing machine-like. It's all just circuit boards and error codes now, like cars as well. This is why I've mentioned this in the past as well. Car mechanics make great elevator mechanics. It's an option for the future if you don't like the electric vehicles. Go to electric elevators instead. Most elevator mechanics I know, lift engineers, also have motorbikes and like tinkering with them a lot. It just seems to be that they're tinkerers. They're the best type of people to actually fix stuff like elevators. Elevators could best be described as factory machines in a vertical shaft. This is very tight. This is begging for a circuit board. I'm going to have to reflow that afterwards because that is not acceptable. This is very fumbly. It's very small and cramped. Instant regret. This is why sometimes I just don't want to get involved in stuff like this. But then once you've started, it's fine. And it seems like, you know, it's daunting when you look at it and you've got lots to do. But then again, once you actually start it, it's fine. Because just time flies. Stick a bit of music on the background for projects like this. I don't normally play music in the background, particularly when I'm designing stuff or reverse engineering stuff. But for stuff like this that is basically just, I need a distraction. So yeah. Rightio, that's good. That's good. That's solid. Excellent. Next question. I'm going to have to turn over to the next page of questions. Stephen Brown asks, what is the purple pen called? The purple pen is a Pilot V sign that contained liquid ink. Notable things about this. The purple pen actually comes with purple ink, which is not really much of a surprise. I refill it with inkjet ink. I simply grab this bit here, pop it out, stick a syringe in, fill it with new ink, and then pop this back in. And that's it reloaded for a good length of time. I use these pens so much that I eventually wear the fibre tip down and then have to get a new batch. It's my favourite pen because I like it because it draws very nicely. And it produces, I shall just demonstrate that, a nice thick black line. It just feels nice to use. It's my favourite pen. I've always had favourite pens. MD Who Designs will know favourite pens. This is another favourite pen for just normal writing. And again, it uses liquid ink. It's held together with tape because this is not a good designer pen. But it's called Reload because you can pop it open, you can fill it with printer ink as well. And it writes with an absolutely solid line, which is my preference. None of these wispy, fiddly little lines. Next question. Dragonheat Gaming says, what's the sketchiest repair you've seen? The worst repairs, the most undesirable repairs, because it instantly casts doubt into your mind, are when people have repaired factory machines or other equipment and they've bypassed the safety circuits. That is unpleasant. Also, when you go into a panel that you're called to and someone else has had a go at repairing it and they don't really mention that, and it's very clear the person didn't really know what they were doing, and a wire popped out and they lost track, or they tried swapping stuff, and you end up not really knowing where everything is, and there's no drawing, and it's just a walk away job. Just don't get involved. It's not worth it, because even though it's them who screwed it up, you're the one who'll take the stick because you were the last person that touched it. That's how it works these days. Who's the last person that touched it, even if it's not them who actually caused all the problems? The same applies to domestic wiring these days, courtesy of all the red tape generating organisations that don't actually really contribute much to society at all. Meow, there's another fucking rant. There's another profanity. I'll have to remember that I profanitized. YouTube does not like profanities. I have to declare my profanities. And they're not allowed to happen within the opening seconds of the video. I'm not allowed to start the video going, effing blind this. It's very odd. Oh shit, do you know what? That was impatience. I should have let it cool and also touch the right. Tell you what, I'm going to start that one from scratch. These are very fun, and that resistor is very hot. Yes, welcome to miniature stuff. This is why circuit boards are good. In hindsight, yes, circuit boards with a little surface mount component on it would have actually been great for this, but that would have involved getting circuit boards made, which is absolutely practical these days. But it does require a bit more time. It's not uncommon in the prop industry for the props you see in television and film to contain custom printed circuit boards just for that prop, because it just saved time in manufacturing them. I love the fact that some of the guys I work with in the prop industry are super skilled sculptors. And you're working next to them, you're doing the electronics on a panel, and you look over and a guy called Steve comes to mind. And you look across, he's just basically stacking blocks of polystyrene on top of each other and then carving them with initially a electric kitchen knife. But then he starts using a sort of sanding pad on them, or a rasp. And next thing you look across and there's a sculpture. There is basically a statue there. And then he coats it with stuff that bonds onto the polystyrene without melting it. And you have what looks like a solid statue. Then he'll put a coating on that, lots of coatings, and then he'll encase it in fiberglass, because otherwise the fiberglass and resin would actually dissolve the polystyrene. And then he just casts loads and loads of these full-size sculptures. It's unbelievable. And yet the same sculpture made by an artist for a public display, some dignified gentry, who usually aren't dignified, it costs hundreds of thousands of pounds apparently, but these prop companies will do the same thing on a daily basis for buttons compared to that. Okay, it's not going to be super cheap, but it's going to be good. The prop companies also have odd side industries. The guy I just mentioned there, Steve, his side industry, him and Paul, is making horses, rubber horses, for rescue practice for teams that rescue horses from rivers and things like that. Very odd. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I've done that again. This is my big fat soldering iron. I'm sure maybe. Yeah. Anyway, yes. What's the next question? So that was what's the sketchiest repair you've seen. That went off in a while. The other ones, let's not talk about the entertainment industry and the... Anyway, Fabian Bar, Bahr. Great name. Where can I get radium gin? Radium gin is ordinary gin with sodium fluorescent technical dye in it. I suppose really it should be medical grade dye. It's drain tracer dye, sodium fluorescent. It's used also medicinally, well not medicinally, but medically, for checking people's veins in the back of their eyes so they actually ingest it, which suggests a relative element of safety, although for some reason it's not classed as a food colouring additive officially. I used it as a food colouring additive, but then again I'm prone to just drinking stuff and eating stuff that is unsafe. I'm still alive, this is good. Yeah, that one looks alright. It has been patched up. So that is the tiniest quantity, like absolutely microscopic quantity of sodium fluorescent, which is a tracer dye, makes it go fluorescent yellow. And on to the next one. Oh, this is so tedious. This is when music in the background would be quite nice. But I shall go with questions instead. Duranto FF says, will I be Zoom streaming with other YouTubers again? I hope so, because I quite enjoyed that. Maybe I shouldn't have had a drink before I did it. I may have brought shame upon myself, but then again, I am the Trashish channel, so I should live up to that expectation. I quite enjoyed that. Hopefully Fran will join us this time. Fran was distrustful of the Zoom software, having access to her camera. Fran is the same age as me, roughly. We're all cynical about technology because we've looked at it evolving and we just see all the security flaws in it, and it's like everybody's going, oh yeah, but what's security when it's so convenient? And it's like, well, you do that then. Me and Fran, we're cynical. We don't trust modern technology. We don't want the house filled with electronic gadgets that basically are accessible via the internet by any hacker at their will. Because they've all got huge defects in them. That's a bit sploshy, that's one of the things. When you don't use the flux, you get spikes in the software. Spikes in the software. The spikes in the solder, which is similar to software. It's not really similar to software. God, I've drunk so much wine. This also helps. The prop industry, you're allowed to drink. Not all the time, though. And not with some companies. The BBC's involved, you're probably not supposed to, but fuck the BBC. I may have said that before. And their low-budget rap parties as well. Let's not mention that. Yes. What's the next question? I'm not going to solder every single one of these and torture you with that, because this is already at 22 minutes. Let's go on to the next question. Which sport team do I support, says Gareth Roberts. None at all. I'm not in sport. That was a fast question. Gazer, I can't see why people do a 2-hour commute to work each way on top of an 8-hour shift. Well, the answer is Gazer. When you've got a trade, you just end up travelling because the companies you work with take on work all over the place and you end up travelling to it, and you've got a choice. You can stay in accommodation or you can travel, and sometimes the company says, well, if you want to stay in accommodation, you'll pay for that yourself, and staying in a hotel is not cheap. So in the case of Husman, we did a lot of travelling on Northern Light. In the case of Husman, we'd end up, because of the way shitty things work in the UK, we'd stay in bed and breakfasts where you pay per person, whereas in America you pay per room. In the UK you pretty much pay per person for bed and breakfast. So you'd end up with loads of guys in one room with just beds everywhere, paying an astronomical sum for that room to the greedy bastards that own the bed and breakfast premises. Yeah, I mean, it was okay, but this lack of privacy, particularly when you get nocturnal tumescence, look that on the internet. Very awkward. From sniggering in the background, you can tell that is very awkward. It's when you wake up the boner. Everybody wakes up the boner. Try not to put your hand round it when you're in a room full of other guys. Indeed, very awkward. Where was I there? Oh, the travel, yes. But travel, Yeah, particularly when it's long shifts and you're traveling late at night and you're not getting much sleep and then you're falling asleep at the wheel. Not great. Welcome to the construction industry and the service industry with big corporate organizations that expect you to travel for miles and nobody actually gives a shit because they don't do it themselves. Yes, and then they say, oh, why is he being paid so much? Well, because I worked about 100 hours this week. That's why I'm being paid so much. And if you want to know what that's like, why don't you go out in the tools and get some overalls on and see what it's like? Oh, no, it's okay. We'll just sit in our fucking office. Yes, indeed. That was another rant. God, this is almost as bad as Saturday live stream. The dark side of Clive. Yes. So, also another thing about the prop company is fiberglass. Oh, and they're trying to get the stuff to cure quickly because everything's last minute. So they have heaters on. Oh God, the fumes, unbelievable. Not pleasant. Fiberglass everywhere, because fiberglass is commonly used in props. It can be quite overpowering with the smell of styrene. Have patience, Clive. Let it cool down, and on to the next one. Next question, which is the last question, incidentally. Elvin Spellmaker. I have a main socket which was causing problems, then the switch just seized up. That is exactly what happens. Is that the last question? I'm not sure that is the last question. I'll turn the page and see if there's more. That is a really common failure mode of switched devices. The switch makes a bad connection, burns, gets hot, and then the little plastic plunger that is supposed to go boinky boinky and actually make the contact flip backwards and forwards melts and then goes like non-boinky boinky, and then the contact won't open and close and it just jams rock solid because it melted because of the heat. And that is a sign that you need a new socket. It's a good thing to change the socket at that point. If you don't, it's going to burst into flames. Do I have another page of questions? No, I do not. You have been spared the wrath of Big Clive having lots of rants with wine and effing and blending, which sometimes happens when I've had wine. But I shall continue making these. I've only made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've got the same again to make plus spares. Righty, okay. So I shall stop now to spare you this boring repetition. Welcome to the prop industry. And the videos coming up will go in a more interesting, a more active direction other than just repetitive making things all the time, which is about 90% of work. There you go. But I shall catch up with you in future videos. But that is the end of this question and answer session.